Hello again. Back for a new episode, Chase the Traveler in the House. So today, the topic is Japanese and the Black Man. Now, I know I did an episode of Japanese and the White Man. Now it's time to do Japanese and the Black Man. So as you know, I'm a black man. And I've lived in Japan. And now, again, I wouldn't say that Japan treats every ethnicity the same way. They have certain stereotypes. I mean, they have stereotypes about every different ethnicity out there. I mean, white people get a certain amount of harassment, of course. But I think they have it better than everybody else, than all the other races out there. Now, as a black person, definitely, I feel there are some advantages in Japan, and I've definitely taken advantage of those advantages. There are a lot of disadvantages in Japan, and I've battled with those also. Now, let me tell you, when I first got here, I didn't realize how little information Japanese people had about black people. Pretty much, they showed a lot of Africa. I mean, they always went to Africa. And every time they went to Africa, they always showed African people with something on top of their heads. I mean, they had something on top of their heads every time. And every time they went over there, they were doing some kind of ceremony, dancing, singing, jumping up and down. It's almost as if that's all they did. So every single time they went to Africa, you never saw a building, you barely saw cars, but they were riding in a car. I mean, you pretty much were seeing a certain pattern over and over and over again. Now, in America, when I grew up in New York City, I mean, there was Channel 4 News, Channel 2 News, and they would basically show every time they arrested somebody, most of the people that they arrested in Manhattan were black. So, but I was young at that time. I didn't really feel, or I didn't understand the optics of television and how that affected me positively or negatively. But the fact of the matter is that in Japan, you felt it more because there were less black people, and because of that, people made you feel or made you understand that they thought that you were part of that, and that they didn't think you could do certain things because they hadn't seen it. So therefore, in Africa, everybody was walking around with something on top of their heads. Everybody was pretty much dancing and singing, and half of them were walking around naked. But somehow they got to that spot and they didn't have to ride a zebra or a horse, and there was an airplane that took them there. So definitely for the American black, it really wasn't all that different. I mean, it was like two things that they showed. You were either playing some type of sport, basketball, baseball, which were the most popular. Football, well, they didn't really show football that much, but basketball was really big. Carl Lewis was really big, or track. They were like, these people are quick. Then there was another pattern where pretty much it was all about the music, where black people are all about singing and dancing. Look, Michael Jackson, he's singing, right? You know him, right? Well, they can all do it. So, and then the thing about it is, right, it's like you were pigeonholed in these categories where if you wanted to do something different, if you wanted to do something else, you really could not do it. You really could not do it. And the reason that you could not do it is because when you tried, if that person didn't have experience overseas, you had to try and convince them that you can do something that they had never seen you do before. And that wasn't easy. And pretty much I'd say Caucasians or the white person had an advantage over you because if you said something and they went back and asked the white person, hey, what do you think about this? And if they met the wrong white person, then of course that stereotype persisted. So I would say that the image that they projected about blacks in America and the image that they projected about blacks in Africa were a little different, but it wasn't really positive. And the images that they projected never really helped you get anywhere. It just made you interesting to certain people who liked that, but it definitely didn't help you when it came down to your employment and your prospects. If you had to survive, it actually made it quite difficult. So, in a sense, I kind of felt victim to that. I'm pretty sure Africans in the 54 countries also fell victim to that. And when you do that, it's really difficult for people to get a job. And when you went on interviews, a lot of times in Japan, I mean, there weren't that many jobs available to you as a foreigner anyway. But when you went out there to get a job, if you didn't look the part, you would have a pretty tough time trying to convince the person that was going to hire you that they wouldn't look stupid by hiring you, because he knows what everybody else is seeing. So if he goes over there and takes a chance with you, he might get in trouble. I've seen that too. I've seen people take a chance on me. And so that's why I don't want to say that everybody was like that it was like 100%. No, it wasn't. Japanese people have given me a chance when I needed to get a chance. I had one Japanese guy that I worked with for years. He used to work at one of the youth centers. And he used to get transferred every 3 years. And every 3 years, I would ask him, hey, can I go with you? And he would take me with him. So we worked together for a good 15 years, 17 years. Every time he got transferred, I transferred with him. Not officially, but he was able, because he was the head of that department, he always made sure that I had a place to teach English where he was at. So he helped me tremendously. He didn't fall for the hype, but a lot of people fell for the hype. So, another thing that kind of like was problematic is that they made us look like we weren't doing anything serious. All we wanted to do was basically take their women. And they showed us all the time at clubs, and they were like, be careful with these people because that's all they do. And they have like multiple girlfriends. So therefore, when you meet somebody that you felt that you like, automatically, if somebody goes up to her and says, hey, I've seen that guy talking to a few girls, it's very believable to her because she's already heard it before. So he's just confirming what she thinks she already knows. And that's very, very difficult, especially if you have pure intentions. So, again, like I said before in the episode that I did about the Japanese and the white man, white people didn't have to deal with pressures that we had to, because they always showed them doing everything. They were doing business. They were doing sports. They were in all sorts of business. And they weren't pigeonholed. It was like, they were in restaurants. They were doing everything. We, on the other hand, we were pigeonholed into like, okay, well, they can do this or they can do that. And that's all they can do. So, again, I'm not saying that Caucasians didn't have problems in Japan when it came to getting certain opportunities. Of course not. No, they had problems also. But we definitely had more problems than them. And we had more problems than them because we were pigeonholed into like 2 or 3 different things. I mean, we weren't in construction. Of course not. We're in sports. We weren't in retail. Of course not. We're singing. We weren't in finance. No. we are dancing somewhere. We can't do anything that relates to teaching because that's the white man's job. But the white man can do everything. We can do everything too, but there are certain individuals that can only do certain things. Now, again, like I said, not everybody was like that, but a good percentage of them were. And you would have to be pretty special to find that person. And I myself, I was able to survive in that environment for quite a long time. But I know a lot of people who could just not survive. And one thing is that differentiated the Black American from the African when I got here, I quickly noticed, is that the Africans, they hustled. The Nigerians, the people from Ghana, they hustled. They hustled way more than us African Americans. What I mean by that is they had less opportunities than we did in Japan. Now, I don't believe this, but the Japanese were like, okay, well, the African American is better than the African. I don't believe that. But they kind of believe that. Of course, they would never tell you that. So for the Africans, it was definitely harder getting a job. So a lot of them, they did things that a lot of Black Americans just would never think of. A lot of Black Americans just wouldn't get involved in. And they hustled because they were given less opportunities than us. For example, Africans opened up retail stores. They were basically selling baggy clothes that African Americans made popular. African Americans were not opening up shops like that. Actually, I don't even know of one African American that opened up a shop selling baggy clothes. But if you went down to Harajuku in Tokyo, in Amerikamura in Osaka, you saw a lot of African Americans opening up shops selling baggy clothes. Now, I've known some Africans that were buying used Japanese cars. They would take them to like a car lot. They would strip that car down. I mean, real strip it. They would stuff everything into a container, ship it back to Nigeria, ship it back to Ghana or whatever it is, whichever part of Africa. And they had like an import-export business. Us African Americans, you wouldn't see anybody like us doing that. We wouldn't do that kind of business. We, on the other hand, I think we've been conditioned to work for the establishment. We've been conditioned not to think like that. And I really think that the Africans had a leg up on us because they were like opening stuff up. And one time, I remember this one African guy that I knew. I mean, we used to say hello to each other, and all of a sudden, one day, immigration picked him up. I was surprised he was being held at immigration jail. Now, I was surprised that the jail at immigration was on like the top floor of the immigration building where you used to go get your visa. His girlfriend called me up and said, hey, you know something, immigration's got him. And I was like, what? Because I've never heard of anything like that happening. She said, yeah, immigration got him. He's in jail right now. You know, he kind of wants to see you. Because nobody was looking at her or paying attention to him. You know, nobody was checking him out. So I went over there and there's nothing I could do for him. I mean, who am I? I went over there because I felt sorry for him. He was, behind a glass wall. That's the first time I ever went to anything that even looked like a prison. And he looked pretty sad in there. And him and his girlfriend, they devised a plan to say, okay, well, you know something, we're going to get married. So because we're going to get married, can you release him? Well, Nope, he was already in the system and they were going to ship him out. Now, he eventually did get shipped out. But then a year or two later, he came back. When I knew him, his name was, I forget what his name was. It was probably like, Jack or whatever. When he came back, he was Jonathan. He was a new man with new paperwork. So, so Jonathan, quote unquote, was back. Back then, they didn't take your picture at the airport. So now that's a little bit more difficult to do. He came back with a new passport, new identity, and now he was in the import-export business. And I was like, damn, this guy gets around. And I'm like, I wish I could do something like that in America. Buy stuff and then put it on a container and send it back home. Now, he took me on one of his, what do you call it? Fact-finding or merchandise-finding mission. Basically, he had a customer from Nigeria who came with him. They went out and bought used electronic goods. Like they bought used televisions, used radios. Now this was about 25 years ago. Used phones and stuff, right? And they stuffed that into a container, shipped it back to Nigeria. And I mean, I saw this guy. For me, at that time, I was making, good money. But then I saw this Nigerian guy. He dropped about $50,000 on merchandise, and he handed it to my man Jonathan, who came back, from being shipped out of here. And Jonathan packed his stuff for him and shipped this container to Nigeria. And then 3 months later, they were back again. So I'm looking at that and I'm like, damn, I wish we African Americans can do stuff like that. But then no, we African Americans, unfortunately, a lot of our business, we depend on the white man to do this for us. No offense to the white man. But for me, I kind of felt like, since I've become Japanese, I kind of want to do things myself now. But it was like these guys, they were more business inclined than us, because they didn't get the opportunities. People wouldn't welcome them in Japan as much as, I'm not saying that I was welcomed that much because I didn't feel that way. But the fact of the matter is that these guys were doing business. These guys were doing business. And that was beautiful. That was beautiful. Now, I have seen some African Americans open some bars here, but I haven't seen anybody take some cars out of Japan, send it back to America. I haven't seen anybody buy some radios over here, send it back to America, and make that work. I also haven't seen any white Americans do the same thing either. I've seen people from India do it, people from Bangladesh do it. I've seen Africans do it. I've seen them, I know some Africans right now that are doing just that. So it's a little bit of a, I don't know. It's, I think that we have been in the Americas for 400 years. I think they've kind of like bred that out of us, honestly. We don't think that way. And Africans in Japan have more businesses than African Americans. I do know some African Americans who have businesses, but Africans in Japan do better when it comes to business, opening up businesses. In regard, I know some people, they have I know this one guy in Kobe, he's had his bar, his dance club for at least more than 10, 15 years. I don't know if he's making any money. He probably wouldn't tell me. But I know that he's had his place for more than 10, 15 years. I don't know of any African American that has been able to do that. I went to a kind of like a bar the other day. Got to run. Got to make that light. I went to a bar the other day where an African was running it. And it was almost like a disco slash bar. And he was running it. I mean, I don't know how much success he has, but he's definitely doing it by himself. But again, me, when I came here, I wasn't conditioned to do things like that. I was conditioned to basically go out there and look for a job. And there's a little bit of animosity between Americans, Black Americans, and Africans. Because it's just back in the old days, when they're trying to talk to girls, obviously, if you tell them you're African American and they want somebody that looks like them, and you tell them you're African, obviously the girl, based on what she's seen on TV, would much rather go with the African American. And I never did this, but sometimes, a girl would meet a certain African guy, and the African guy would say, "Oh, I'm American." And of course, as an American, he's not, and if he is or whatever. And some guys would go, "Oh, no, he's African," and rain on that guy's parade. I never did that. I didn't think it was any of my business. I didn't, we're all in the same boat to a certain degree. So it's like the Africans and African Americans were kind of like, I wouldn't say it's like all out war, definitely not. I mean, we get along to a certain degree. But there's like a little bit passive aggressiveness. But I think, like I said, I think that the Africans are doing way better than us. And they have way more issues to deal with. So, I think that, again, for me, it's like the black man has never come to Japan and, I would say, killed people in the masses through war. Never. He's never even declared war on Japan. And but on the other hand, sometimes you're made to feel as if you are not as good as the people who have. And they fear us, even though we could never really affect their situation in an abnormal way. Unlike America could really affect Japan's situation in an abnormal way if they decided to pull their 100,000 troops out of here and say, "Hey, you're on your own, buddy." There's no black man or no African country that can mess with Japan that way. But we are treated as if sometimes, not by everyone again, as if we are kwai. Japanese love to say that word, kwai. It means scary, scary, scary. Again, I'm generalizing to a certain degree, but we're made to feel that way sometimes. And I'm not sure that it's all that fair. But either way, thanks again for joining me. Much appreciated. Chase the Traveler, coming to you from Kitaku in Osaka, bringing you valuable insight on Japan. And if you'd like for me to talk about a certain issue or a certain topic, let me know. I might do it. I might be able to do it. But either way, please like and subscribe. Please watch all my videos, because sometimes some viewers don't fully understand what I'm trying to do. And it's because they're only seeing a snippet of what I'm saying. You're not going to understand me in 25 minutes. But if you watch everything, you will slowly understand what I'm trying to say. And you will, of course, understand Japan to a degree that you've never seen or heard before. Because I like to present realistic what's the word I'm looking for? It's tough when you're tired, right? I like to present Japan in a realistic way, is what I'm saying. And I don't think that gets done a lot. Some people might like that I do that. Some people might not like that I do that because it affects the image to a certain degree. But hey, I'm just one person. I'm not going to affect the image that much, trust me. But anyway, thanks again. Much appreciated. Chase the Traveler. See you in the next episode.